What is going on, fam? It's your boy, aka Blonde Hair Don't Care, coming at you with FanX. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, we got a very special virtual panel talking about all things Pawnee. Yes, we're going to be talking about Parks and Rec. And remember that this virtual panel is brought to you by our friends over at Siegfried and Jensen. Make sure you guys go ahead and show them some love. I want to go ahead and get right to the virtual panel, but first, some announcements. Remember, go ahead and go onto our website to purchase tickets to next year's event in 2021. Right now, super affordable price. In fact, if you're watching this, you're probably already going to be joining us. So go onto the website, check it out, get those tickets. While you're there, if you want some official FanX merch, look legit just like us, go ahead and click on the merch store. It'll take you over to the, you click on the link, take you over to the store, buy some gear, some hats, some pins, boom, water bottles. We even got masks, we got hand sanitizers, all the things you're going to go ahead and need, especially during this fall. Yeah. So another thing that we want to go ahead and bring up next week, we have our most famous panel, which is the Geek Trivia Challenge. Yes, we are doing it. We've gotten so many different messages from our FanX family. In fact, we're going to go ahead and do it every month. So here's your opportunity. If you want to get in on that, test your geek knowledge. Yeah. Go ahead and go to our social media page on Facebook. You'll go ahead and look at the event. You'll be able to go ahead and see where you can go ahead and sign up. Now, remember, we don't take all the applicants. There is a little process. You have a Google Doc that you need to go ahead and, you have a Google form that you're going to go ahead and fill out. That way we go ahead and separate the geeks from the not so much, right? You need to go ahead and make sure that you're on your game. Quick little questions. We'll be in touch. And that way, maybe you can be a next contestant on our Geek Trivia virtual panel show. Yep. Without further ado, here we go. Parks and Rec coming at you. We got our moderator, Mr. Jake Dietz is in the house. What is going on, fam? Look at that background.
Hey, you got to go all out, man. You got to go all out for this kind of stuff, right?
You are amazing. We can always count on you. Hey, Parks and Rec, like for somebody that got on the train late in life like I did after the show was already done, what is it? Explain it to me. Like if I'm a newbie, don't know anything about it, what can I expect? What kind of show? Isn't it like The Office?
Yeah, so that's a comparison that you hear a lot, is that it's a lot like The Office, but I'll be honest, it is also its own thing, right? I mean, it is an ensemble cast comedy like The Office, but it really dives into a lot of other scenarios, a lot of other situations. The characters are awesome. The relationships are incredible. The friendships are awesome. We're going to talk about all of that stuff on our panel, but I mean, it is just a good time. You're rooting for these people to be successful, especially the main character, Leslie Knope. I mean, it's just an awesome show.
Oh, Leslie, I love it. Okay, everybody, FanX fam, settle down, grab your snacks, do your thing, treat yourself to this virtual panel. Jake, I'm going to go ahead and bring in all of your panelists. Go ahead and do your thing.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Ro. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks, everybody, for watching. My name is Jake Dietz. You can find me on Stolen Droids podcast as well as Movies That Make Us. I'm going to just kind of go around and have everybody introduce themselves. Let's go ahead and start with you, William, and introduce yourself and tell us where everybody can find you.
William Pace. I'm on Facebook a lot. I'm with the Utah Browncoats. I'm the captain of the charity organization there and on the board of directors. So you'll find me everywhere all the time.
Awesome. Thank you, William. We're excited to have you here. Let's go ahead and have London. Let's have you introduce yourself.
Hi. So I'm London. I've been with FanX for about 3 years now. So I do panels. I talk about Judaism. I talk about different social issues, social justice issues, community issues that you can get involved with. One way to be involved right now, I also volunteer with the ACLU of Utah, and we have the election coming up very, very soon, so do register to vote. The ACLU of Utah doesn't care how you vote. Just go to vote.gov and make sure that you're registered.
I don't think there's anything more appropriate to promote and put out there than voting on a Parks and Rec panel. I think Leslie would be proud of that promotion there. So, Tracy, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself. I've never met you before, Tracy. I don't even know who you are.
Yeah, Jake, it's good to finally meet you face to face. My name is Tracy Mangum. I'm part of the again with Jake, part of the Movies That Make Us podcast. We cover movies that we love. It's a very positive, uplifting type show. We have a lot of fun with it with our good friend Valerie Cameron from B98.7, and been a panelist with FanX kind of since the beginning. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm hoping that Jake brought paunch burgers for everybody.
Yep, and those child-sized sodas that are literally the size of a child. Let's go ahead and Rachelle, let's have you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachelle Hardy. I've been a FanX panelist for a couple years now, and I'm also an artist, and I've been lucky enough to be able to sell my art prints at FanX. I'm also an actor, a filmmaker, indie filmmaker locally here. I love the FanX family, and I'm just really happy to be here. You can find me on Instagram, Rachelle.Hardy, or just on Facebook. So anyway, add me as a friend if you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachelle. All right, guys, I'm excited to be here. This is probably the highlight of my day, to come and spend an hour talking about Parks and Recreation, which is literally one of the best shows ever on TV. Maybe the best show ever. I don't know. It's hard to rank that. That's all subjective, right? But let's talk about what Parks and Rec is, a little bit about what the show is, and some of our favorite moments and maybe episodes from this series. A lot of people call it and say it's a lot like The Office. I think it's very different. The first couple of seasons, they kind of do a similar format, but then they move away from that. And it really, that's when it starts to shine and becomes its own thing. And you really get to see Leslie Knope and Ron Swanson and all those relationships and characters develop. But let's go ahead and just go around. London, we're going to start with you in the corner. What's your favorite episode or moment from the series?
Oh gosh. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of really lovely moments, but one of my favorites is the episode with in the last season where you see that really lovely interaction between Jerry and Donna. He's dropped his wedding band down this grate, and Donna sits with him and they reminisce, and she orders dinner for both of them. Because I think there are a lot of times that you get some really hostile feelings toward Jerry, and it's with love, sort of. But he's also just so picked on, and my heart goes out to him, because I think we've all been the picked on kid at school, or the picked on person at work, and we have those days. And it's a time that we really see that bond between coworkers, and we really see, and she shows up the next day with fresh oranges, his penance.
Yes.
And it's just so sweet, because we really do see that there has been this love all along.
I love it. That is a great moment. And you get to see kind of that softer side of Donna. And when you get to see that with Donna, like, it's just special. So I love that moment. Great episode. Tracy, what about you?
Oh man, one of my favorites is Ron Swanson ordering breakfast about bring me all of your bacon and eggs.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think you misheard me. I said bring all. You think I said bring me a lot of bacon and eggs, and I said I need all of your bacon and eggs. The other one that kills me is I'm a big fan of Andy. His interactions with April are just fantastic. I love the scene where he goes out and is trying to exercise, and he just strips off all of his clothes, and he's like, "Exercise is hard. I'm dying," and just rolls on the ground.
And you're a runner yourself, Tracy, so you know that running is hard.
I can definitely relate.
All right. William, what about you?
It goes back and forth between a few, but I think the hunting episode where they all go to the hunting cabin and for example, just the tent that's filled with all of the stuff from the Sky Mall catalog.
Yes.
Like every single item he could get that he was going to return the following Monday.
Yes.
Because you finally get to see the personalities of each character go to the extreme because they're under the stress of being together in the woods, and it just devolves so beautifully.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the way Tom camps is probably the only way that I would like to camp. That's the only way I would do it. Out on the ground in a tent, not going to happen. But Sky Mall Central, absolutely, I would do that for sure. Rachelle, what about you?
Well, there's a lot of really great ones. I particularly like the one where Andy and April, they have a baby, and when she has the Halloween costume makeup when she's about to give birth, they're like, "You need to wash that off," and she's like, "No, I put it on after I went into labor." And then it's funny how they're naming the baby. I just thought it was great because I know at first she really didn't want to have a child. Sorry, my thing is kind of wiggly here. Anyway, I know she was kind of afraid to have a baby, but I like that I don't know. I just think that Andy and April are really cute. So I like that episode. And also I was going to say the hunting one too. I really like that one.
I think, and I love that we've taken a couple of moments and episodes from the last season, because that's one of my favorite seasons from the series. And we're going to talk about that later in the panel, because I think it's the last season of Parks and Rec may be one of my favorite final seasons of any show ever. So I love these examples. These are also great. My favorite moment, I love the wedding between Leslie and Ben. And when Jeremy Jam shows up and he's yelling, and Ron Swanson tells him, if you take, one more step, I'm going to punch you in the face. And then he does it. And I just like, those are the moments I just love Ron, because he's a man of his word. He's honest. He's not. And in that moment, he's standing up for Leslie, who he probably cares about more than any other workplace close workplace proximity associate. Yes. So I love that moment. I think we've got a question coming in from social media from Deb Hess. She's asking, in your opinion, what is the worst episode you think and why? Okay, I've got opinions here, but we're going to go ahead and throw this one first to London. Let's start with you again.
I can't name like a single worst episode off the top of my head. I didn't love some of the earlier episodes where they'd made Leslie very ditzy, and she's got all of these sorts of missteps when she's talking to Tom about where he's from. Those make me cringe so hard. It's very then it is reminiscent of The Office and Michael Scott. And I wasn't really sure I was going to love this show. The writers did a really good job changing that as things moved forward. But early on, I was a little bit uncertain. So I would say I didn't enjoy that as much.
Yeah. Good. Rachelle, what do you think?
I'm going to go with, I don't really think that there is a bad episode. There's something that's great about all of them, but I do agree with London that it's really good that they got away from kind of the format that The Office had, because I don't know, that just, it's great that they moved away from that. I don't know. There's something I like about all of them. I do like the later ones, especially, I actually was just watching the very last one, and I was kind of getting a little bit choked up because of how emotional Leslie was getting. So anyway, I kind of swapped that around to a best instead of a worst.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. You found like a silver lining. I'll go. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I'll be honest, every time I watch through Parks and Rec, I get emotional. And there are episodes that I know that I'm going to start tearing up, and my wife makes fun of me, but it's okay. We have a good relationship. It's fine. Tracy, what do you think? What was maybe one of the worst episodes?
I'm kind of going to hump on the bandwagon, in that I don't think that there's like really bad episodes. Greg Daniels was the original creator of The Office, and he started the spinoff with Michael Schur. Greg Daniels eventually left, and Michael Schur kind of took over as showrunner. That's when it really hit its stride. So I'm with the other two. I would say something in the early seasons, the characters were still kind of being fleshed out, relationships were being fleshed out. But I don't really know of anything that really sticks out in my head as being the worst episode.
Awesome. William, what are your thoughts?
I don't have a worst episode, but I don't just watch an episode. Whenever I start watching, I watch 9.
Yeah.
I'll be working on some projects. I'll put it on and just listen to the dialogue.
Yes.
As I'm working, and they all blend together. I think for the first season, they had to get their stride, but honestly, they got their stride pretty fast for a first season.
Yeah. I think, I don't know what the one single worst episode would be, but I do know that Mark Brandanowitz would be in the episode, because that's how you can tell, for me, the difference between the earlier episodes. And, once Mark is gone and you've got Ben and Chris there, I feel like that's when the show really started. You could tell it was already kind of hitting its stride, but that's really where it has its identity. The first episode, especially, I kind of feel like, they're trying to make Leslie this kind of, London, you mentioned ditzy, not capable Michael Scott type character. But by the end of the series, Leslie's not like that. So it's really hard to go back and watch those earlier episodes for me, because I'm like, this is not her. And seeing Ron in a suit at work is just really bizarre to me, because he just doesn't care that much about his job to wear a suit and tie to work. That's just not Ron. So great question, Deb. Thank you for the question. All right. Oh, sorry. Was someone saying something? Okay.
I was just going to say, we've been talking about this the wrong way. It's the worst.
Yeah, the worst. Yeah. Thank you, Jean Ralphio. Let's talk a little bit about the look of Pawnee and some of the props that are on set, because if you're a fan of the show and you go back and you watch these episodes over and over again, you really start to notice a lot of those little details and a lot of the little props that they plant there. Like, I love looking at Leslie Knope's office, and she's got, the pictures that she's got in the background, and you've got Larry Bird on one side, and you've got Madeleine Albright. You've got all of these famous women politicians and strong leaders and things like that. They really do a good job. Now, William, you've got a little bit of inside knowledge on that. What are your thoughts as far as the props and the look of Pawnee, Indiana?
One of the best things you can tell about a show early on is if the art direction's so good, you don't notice it. In any environment, if you're watching a show, the art direction should blend into the show so well that it just feels real. And that's hard to achieve on a comedy like Parks and Recreation, because some of it's just so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But everything in the series was built by the prop department, and her name was Gabe Perello was the prop master for that show, and she really loved the use of print. So you see print graphics and anything that can be printed, book covers, maps, photos, newspapers. She was constantly using this. Like, every time Leslie ended up in the newspaper and didn't want to be, that she'd hold up the newspaper. And that whole prop had to be built and set up to look like the real thing. The Sun Pawnee, or Pawnee Sun, those were always being created for every episode. And there are so many props. People don't think about props in a comedy like Parks and Rec or The Office, but they're everywhere. And if you go back and watch and just look for props, really funny stuff going on behind the scenes, because they're making fun of government in every possible way.
Yeah.
The banners and the binders and the, from the recall, there are the stickers. And we start to see those sort of peppered through like every episode after that. April has been, wild with these exclamation points and the don't stickers. And we sort of see them throughout City Hall and the town. In episodes after that, forever after. And I love that. It makes me laugh every time.
I agree. And I love that they keep calling back to a lot of those props and a lot of those things that they've done. My question, William, you mentioned that they did a lot of this stuff print. So is there a warehouse somewhere where all of the banners that Leslie Knope printed throughout the series are stored and housed? Because she printed a banner like for everything, and it was awesome.
A lot of the print props, because they're just paper, they go right into a shredder. They don't survive the shows. But they're archived by people. And people who get devoted to these kind of shows keep everything that they can find, because they want to produce them as stickers and stuff when they have conventions later and they meet these people. People will print off a graphic they loved in the show and take it to a convention and have that actor sign it. A great example is Ron's breakfast photo in his office. That was not just a piece of clip art. They built that graphic to make it look as flat and as boring as possible. I mean, it's literally just a breakfast plate on a blue plaid background, but they photoshopped the plate onto a background. It's not even sitting on a tabletop photographed. And so you get these really stark, hard graphics, because Ron fell in love with it enough that he hung it on his wall. It's just a couple pieces of toast, scrambled eggs, and bacon.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at the graphic, it's not even a good graphic of those things.
That's awesome. And I do love, you can tell there was a lot of care that went into the look and the feel. And one of the really that sets up the look and feel of Pawnee, especially at City Hall, is the murals and some of the scenes that the murals depict. one of the running topics or themes throughout Parks and Recreation is the relationship between the people of Pawnee and the indigenous people in the area around Pawnee, and their relationship, their history, their current relationship. London, what are your thoughts as far as that goes and how it has been depicted in the show?
Sorry, I was muted. So it's really an interesting thing for us to be talking about. We live in a state that has, at this point in history, 8 federally recognized tribes. And, throughout history, before we got here and had a government that recognized 8 tribes, had more move through it. So it's definitely a kind of strange thing to navigate. Darren Longfight is a really interesting voice from the MHA Nation. He's a blogger and has really great perspectives. He did an interview with Jonathan Joss, who played Ken Hotate, who's the leader of the fictional Wamapoke Nation. That's the indigenous group in Pawnee. And there is an actual, it's pronounced more like Pawnee, and I'm getting that wrong, and I'm so sorry. I want to apologize right off the bat for anybody who's watching this, but there actually is a Pawnee Nation that's sort of not centralized, but headquartered in Oklahoma. But Jonathan Joss had a lot of say in how Ken Hotate was depicted. He has long hair that he wears pulled back in a ponytail. But you always see him in a suit. He's very, very savvy, very in on every joke. His business acumen is incredible. He's been very successful, and he's able to manipulate situations and still remain a very kind person who manages to educate everybody around him. Sometimes even in situations that he shouldn't have to.
Right.
There's, we can think about the Harvest Festival when he's sort of explaining to Leslie, horrible things happened to my people here not super long ago, and now you want to have a carnival on top of that land. Right. That's not great. I would like to hear from other panelists too. Like there's one misstep in the show that stands out to me in a big way. Leslie goes and buries artifacts from the Wamapoke to slow down breaking ground on what's going to be the Paunch Burger on the side of Block 48. And we find out later that they're relics, but she didn't know that. And I mean, I have friends who are anthropologists. My partner is an anthropologist. So maybe that stands out to me more than it would to most viewers. But like that was a horrific thing that she did. And the show sort of like slaps her on the wrist and then doesn't ever focus on it again.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. What are your thoughts on that, Tracy?
Sorry, my audio with London was cutting out a lot, so I missed a lot of what she said. So kind of a bad Wi-Fi. I'm sorry.
No worries. Rachelle, what are your thoughts on what London said with that experience at Lot 48?
Yeah, I understand what London is saying, and I think in a way, there's a lot of people who, if you don't come from that culture and you don't know the history, you can make missteps like that, and we see a lot of that coming to light these days, and with people having to change names of sport teams and things like that. It's hard when you don't grow up in a culture, but sometimes we think, well, I'm paying honor to them or something like that, and the people who are really in that culture, they don't see it the same way. And it's a lot of it is I think feeling like maybe if someone is offending us, they don't mean to, they think that they're trying to help or something like that. And so it's kind of complicated, I guess.
Yeah. I think one of that is a horrendous scene. And when she does it, it's a horrible, awful thing that she's done. I think one of the redeeming qualities about Leslie Knope, though, and her character is more than anybody else, she recognized it. And it went to an extreme that she normally wouldn't go to. And I think and not that it makes it right, but I think it demonstrates how obsessed she was with trying to stop the Paunchberger, trying to stop that she was willing to kind of go outside her own moral boundaries and do something that was just awful. Again, I don't know that makes it right, but it is probably one of the worst examples of their treatment with the indigenous peoples there during the series.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, that it is really indicative of her mindset more than anything else.
And I'm sure that, Amy Poehler isn't someone who would really do that. It's more about her character in it. And it kind of goes to show that when people are desperate or really want something really bad, they do bad things sometimes, and it doesn't make it right at all.
No,
it's almost, you can learn something from that episode.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate those moments because it took me back to something that only comedy can get away with. Like when MASH did all the anti-war stuff in its time. One of the best things about Parks and Recreation is sometimes they'll hit a really hard subject. And we always think, well, they're just going for the discomfort value, but they are actually teaching us things about government at times. And they hit those hot button topics through comedy, which allows people to carry into something without getting angry. And then they start to look at it as the characters look at it and go, oh, well, they have the same feelings I do on the different polar ends of that. And so it opens up a discussion. And that's one of the things I love about Parks and Recreation.
That's a great point.
I had a thought just now about look at Jojo Rabbit. That's kind of, that movie talks about Nazism and Hitler and all that, but they tried to do it through having some comedians on there, kind of teaching the newer generation about it, but trying to look at it from a different angle. So I don't know. I just all of a sudden had that thought.
Yeah. I think by and large they do a great job with the indigenous peoples. There's a lot of satire that if you don't realize that it's satire, you might think it's almost offensive, right, but you know that it is. But I do think that I think you're right, London. I think that scene was a big misstep, and I think they could have accomplished the same thing in a different way. And it just comes across as really disrespectful. And I think the only thing for me that I don't know, it's just Leslie's response to it herself. She's always her hardest critic, but still, that doesn't make it right.
Right.
So I think we've got a couple of questions from the audience. You guys, this is great. We love getting these questions. Julianne Briscoe, she's asking, who has the best friendship? Julianne, are you reading our notes? Because I swear that's coming up in our show. We had that on our outline, but let's talk about it. Who has the best friendship in Parks and Recreation? Let's who wants to start? Well, we'll go with you, Tracy. Go for it.
I love the dynamic of Ron and Leslie because she's so pro-government and he's so anti-government. They're very polar opposites, but they work well with each other. They understand each other. They empathize with each other and really get along with each other. And those two together, there's something about Nick Offerman and Amy Poehler that just absolutely pops off the screen when they're together.
It's true. Even if they were to host like a crafting competition show, I think it would work.
I think that would be great.
London, what about you? What do you think? Who has the best friendship?
I talked about Donna and Jerry earlier, and I love that pairing. Obviously there's Anne and Leslie, and they're great. But I really like some of the scenes between Chris and April, because he is constant positivity all the time. He is literally the happiest person ever. He pushes himself to his limit and past his limits sometimes. And April is there to kind of tell him, like, you don't have to be happy all the time. You can be sad, and you can rest, and it's okay to be disappointed, and it's okay to feel bad, because you're not going to feel bad forever. But you are human, so it's okay. And that's so important. We need those friends.
Yeah, he had no idea how to be sad until he met April, and she was like a pro at it, so it was fun. I love that. That is a great friendship. William, what do you think?
I was going to go with Ron and Leslie, just because you could tell they're friends without them ever having to say anything. There are times when you just can tell they hit this mutual mark. And because of what was said earlier, the polar opposites make that seem like it's impossible. But they're constantly coming to a place together that defies words, and that's usually where you can see the best friendships. They're not obvious; they're just really deep.
Yeah. I like the Ron and Leslie dynamic as well. Rachelle, what do you think?
I also like Ron and Leslie's friendship just because it's a mutual respect. I really like how friendly April is with just about everybody. I mean, she kind of a little bit flies under the radar. I love her just offhand comments here and there, but then also Leslie, I don't know. I feel like maybe at first sometimes people don't understand Leslie, but she really cares about a lot of them. So I mean, it's really hard. They all are really good friends, and that's why it's sad when it ends, because they all just kind of don't know what to do with themselves a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. Julianne, I hope we're answering your question, but we want to know what your favorite friendship is from the show as well. So you need to put that in the comments, and we'll see if we can get that flashed up on screen when you do answer it. But I'm going to say it's hard for me to pick a favorite friendship from the show. I love Ron and Leslie. I love the relationships that we talked about, Chris and April. I love the relationship between Chris and Ben, the friendship that they have as accounting buddies, going around and fixing these bad economies, local economies. And I think probably the one that I'm going to pick is the relationship between April and Andy and Ben when he's their roommate in their house, and the way they help him communicate, the way he helps them learn how to be adults, and the way they really balance each other out as well. I just love it. It's just a great positive friendship and kind of opposites attracting as well. One of the things I love about the show is you've got so many different people that find a way to work together and really build off of each other's strengths and balance each other out. Mm-hmm. I think we've got another fan question as well. All right, Kayla DeMuth, what do you think about Li'l Sebastian? This should be a controversial topic, unless we all love him. I don't know. William, what do you think about Li'l Sebastian?
Earlier, when you asked what was my favorite episode, I actually did think of Li'l Sebastian because I love that the camera continuously cuts to Ben.
Yes.
And Ben just looks at the camera. Because when I first saw Li'l Sebastian, they were so happy. I'm like, I don't understand where they're that happy over the little horse either. So I sided with Ben. I learned to love Li'l Sebastian, but the fanaticism with which they loved him, including the concert and the monuments and the T-shirts, I was with Ben the whole time. Every time it showed him, I'd start laughing. I'm like, that's me. I don't get it.
I'm the same way. I kind of was like, okay, it's a little horse thing, it's a cow, whatever. Anyway, I actually liked him better when they had the concert, but no, it's a great episode, and it's a great character. I agree with him though.
Yeah. London, what do you think about Li'l Sebastian?
Okay, y'all, I did not grow up in Utah. I grew up in St. Louis, so like the first time I saw lambs, I was 24. And we're driving, and we're headed up to Logan, and I see lambs out the window, and I scream, "Lambs!" At the top of my lungs. And my brother slams on the brakes, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Can I stop and look at the lambs?" And he's like, "What is wrong with you?" So, like, I get it. I get, like, the baby animal love. Like, tiny animals are my thing. And so, like, yes, I love Li'l Sebastian. And, like, Li'l Sebastian, my favorite response is Ron. When he does the giggles. No, I think baby animals are great. And I know he's not a baby. I know he's like a miniature pony. Yeah.
I love Ron's response when he's like, when I saw the flag was half mast today, I thought some government bureaucrat had died. Little did I know. I mean, he's just so, like, it's just awesome. Tracy, what do you think about Li'l Sebastian?
The intensity with which he marches up and lights the torch.
Yes. Yes. Of course, then he blows his eyebrows off, but it's great. All right, Tracy, what do you think about Li'l Sebastian?
Well, I think it's interesting because originally they were talking about actually killing off one of the characters, and then they decided on Li'l Sebastian. My favorite thing of the episode is the 5,000 candles in the wind.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which is a great song.
Andy's theme song.
Yes, I love 5,000 Candles in the Wind because Leslie told him he needed to write a song that was like Candle in the Wind, but 5,000 times better. Yeah. So what's better than that? 5,000 Candles in the Wind. It's like Andy. I just love Andy and the way he sees the world. Yeah. You know, it's just
so pure.
It's just so lovable.
I can't help but think of the song when I hear the words Li'l Sebastian.
Aw.
Yeah, I think when the first episode that Li'l Sebastian was on there, I was trying to figure out the joke. I'm like, I don't get what the joke is. Like, is this a thing? Are people really obsessed with miniature horse? Like, I don't know what the joke is exactly. So my reaction was probably very similar to Ben. And I do love that they always cut to Ben on the camera. It's one of the few times after the first couple of seasons, you've got some of Ben's reactions, some of Ron's reactions, and then April where they kind of break that fourth wall, because most of the time they don't after the first couple of seasons. But I think Li'l Sebastian's grown on me. And I do love the moment when they see the Li'l Sebastian impersonator. He has an impersonator, and Leslie takes it as a sign that they need to get married.
I know. It's funny. You know, I think that was the joke, is that what is Li'l Sebastian? I think that's part of why it's so funny, is because we don't know. All we know is these characters are really excited about it, except for Ben. And so I think that's part of it. It just came out of nowhere. I don't know where they got the idea. I honestly don't. Do you guys know?
I don't know.
I think that's part of why it's funny.
If you guys know that are watching, put it in the comments. We'd like to know where they got the idea for Li'l Sebastian.
They jump into it like there is this whole backstory mythology.
Yes.
And we're not party to that, so we're just as confused as Ben is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why Ben's a great character, because they can use that to now explain why Li'l Sebastian's a big deal, because he's like, I don't get it. Why is he such a big deal? Okay, well, let's explain it to you, Ben. But they're really explaining it to us, and I think that's a great way to do it. All right. I've just gotten the 10-minute warning, guys, which means we're running low on time. I really want to talk about the final season of Parks and Recreation. This was, you know, we what was it, like the 7th season? I think it was the 7th season. It was a little bit different. I remember when it started, the season premiere, and it was like however many years later, like 2 years later. I'm like, wait a second, what? Like they did this whole time jump thing.
Yeah.
What were your guys' thoughts about the final season? We'll start with you this time, Tracy.
I absolutely loved the final season. Michael Shore, who is the showrunner for The Good Place, also did, for Parks, also did The Good Place, and I think that those two shows ended pretty much brilliantly. They brought together all the characters, they summed everything up, and then of course we have to add in as an addendum the quarantine edition of the season.
Yes.
But just everybody ends up where they should, and everything just ties up so nicely. I really thought it was just a beautiful way to end the show.
Awesome. Rachelle, what do you think about the final season?
I agree.
What were some
a
of the
lot.
highlights?
Yeah, I agree with Tracy a lot. One thing I wanted to mention, I loved, Leslie and Ben when she's talking about, well, they want them both to run for, was it for governor? Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, and so it's like, okay, well, which one of us should run? And he makes the sacrifice, and in front of everybody, they're going to flip a coin. But then he's like, she's going to run for governor. And I just was like, oh, that's so nice. And it kind of, to me, was a little bit symbolic of that last season where everybody kind of, they come around and they start finding ways that they can help each other get what they want from life and reach their goals. If you think about it, it's kind of, I kind of thought of it as a metaphor. So.
I love the episode where they're struggling with who's going to run for governor between the two of them. And so Leslie says, let's do a pros and cons list. And they go through the pros and cons for Ben running for governor. And then they're like, pros and cons for me running for governor. It's the same. It's the same list. It's just, the names are switched, but it's the same list.
He wanted it so bad. I don't think there's any way he was going to not let it be her. So
yeah. Well, and that's, I love Ben's example of being a supportive partner, right? He is so good at that. And I think he's such a great example of the opposite of toxic masculinity, right? And you hear that term thrown out there a lot. And I think I would love for my daughters to find a husband or a partner that supports them like Ben Wyatt does. And I'd love for my sons to find that as well. I think that's not just gender specific. London, what were your thoughts about the last season?
I was kind of uncertain at first just because, I don't know, the conflict between Ron and Leslie is so unlike either of them. It would be so unlike Leslie to forget a friend for so long, to sort of leave someone out in the cold like that. And it's so unlike Ron to not be upfront with his concerns or to not be upfront when he feels slighted in some way. He's someone who historically was very, very good about helping others address issues like that. With April and Andy, he was very, very good. He's part of the reason that they ended up being together. And so I felt like that was a very strange start to the season.
Yes.
But I did end up really liking where it went. It was a lovely wrap up, like everyone else has said. It felt like a very natural conclusion, but also like a sort of fairy tale happy ending. It was just kind of a lovely hug at the end. So,
well, and I love that we came back to, they wanted to make a swing in the park.
Yeah.
That was such a brilliant last way to bring them all together.
They had to fix it.
Or excuse me,
The episode where Ron and Leslie are locked in the Parks and Rec department, where they lock them in and they finally get all their grievances out and they finally figure out what happened, is one of my favorite television episodes of any show ever. And when I talked about there are certain episodes that I know I'm going to get emotional, that's one of them. And I'm not even ashamed. I don't care, because it is so touching and so amazing, because their friendship, like, I'm with you, London, when at the beginning they weren't getting along. I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to like this very much. But when they wrapped that storyline up, it was just perfect. William, what about you? What were your thoughts on the final season?
I agree with everything said. I would add one thing. It was great to see something we'd followed for so many years actually wrap up. There's so many amazing shows that get canceled. And as a credit to the writing, I think one of the coolest things about Parks and Recreation is they never forgot anything, because they were wrapping up subplots in that final season. Like the Cones of Dunshire finished its entire story cycle.
Yes.
And I had forgotten about the Cones of Dunshire by that point. And suddenly it comes full circle and it becomes a published game. It became its own story, which was
even
hilarious.
Had a sequel.
Yeah.
That they said was painfully intricate. Like, that is just perfect. I love the final season. I know they're going to be jumping in here in a second, but whenever I watch it and I get to the final season, I always think of Wayne's World. If you guys remember that movie, at the very end when they're doing the different endings and they're like, well, let's do the super duper happy ending. Oh yeah, that's doable. I feel like that's what the writers did with the final season of Parks and Rec. They said, let's go ahead and do the super duper happy ending where everybody gets a happy ending. And I think it's just perfect. I mean, right down to Craig, who had been a side character just recently, and you see him get his relationship with Typhoon at the end, and it's just beautiful and perfect. And I wouldn't change a thing, and it's awesome. And the pandemic episode just added to it. And now Ro's here, so our fun is over.
I am so sorry. Listening in the back as a fanboy and wanting to chime in, and I'm like, no, but I got to switch cameras and stuff. Oh, I loved it because there's so many things to cover and such a great cast. One of the things I wanted to go ahead and actually bring up, though, Li'l Sebastian is our funeral potatoes. If you don't know Utah, like
That's a good point.
from the potatoes, right? But if you might not know. So that is their, Li'l Sebastian is their funeral potatoes. If you're from the community, you know what it stands for, what it is, what to expect, or when to expect.
Bro, can I add something to that that's specific to this? Jeff Mandel was the artist on Parks and Recreation, and he came out as a special guest to an event in Utah, and he asked us, what is the local cuisine? Because when you go to Louisiana, you get food in Louisiana, you know you're in Louisiana. You get certain things in Boston. He came to Utah, and he asked this circle of friends, what's the local cuisine? And everybody went, funeral potatoes? And he's like, what on earth are funeral potatoes? So a guy connected to the show has experienced that very.
And I think that's a great example. I remember a couple years ago, funeral potatoes broke the internet because Walmart started carrying a funeral potatoes, and people were like, "What is funeral potatoes?" Like the rest of the world, like this just seems dark and weird. Like, no, you just don't get it. It's delicious. That's all you need to know.
It's so sad. It's so delicious at the same time. You don't know, comment, ask a question. We'll definitely let you in on this secret over here in SLC and in Utah in general. But I mean, like I said, there's so much to go ahead and chat about, right? From Ron Swanson and his sax leading that double life to Tom. Tom is like, on the surface seems so superficial, but he gets deep. Deep. There's different layers with Tom, his relationship with Donna, his entrepreneurship. There's just so much to cover. If you could, like one question. Sorry to take the mic, Jake, but
you're good, man.
Buddy, hey, who supporting cast? Who is your favorite and why? We're gonna start with Rachelle.
Oh,
Zach.
Jean Ralphio.
Jean Ralphio?
Yeah, Ralphio, yeah. He's
Worst.
Kinda. No, my daughter likes him too.
He is amazing. Yes, he is amazing. London, what do you got?
I love Shauna Walway-Tweet. She's not the brightest star, and she has a troubled history with men. But if she can kind of heal and figure out her own self-worth, girlfriend's got a good thing going on. She is really good at what she does, and I don't know, if she can get some self-confidence, I'm rooting for her.
I feel ya. Tracy, who do you like and why? Supporting cast.
Oh man, I probably have to go with Jean Ralphio as well.
Yeah.
His character just kills me every single time. I was lucky to meet him once. He is just the nicest guy and an incredible improv comic. He's got a series on Netflix with Ben Schwartz that's absolutely hysterical. It's long form improv, and he brought a lot of improv to his character in the show, and I think he's great.
I love it because, little by little, there'd be different energies that are so hard to go ahead and find, right? With any kind of series as it keeps going. William, who's your go-to supporting cast member?
Supporting it would have to be Patton Oswalt when he does the filibuster at the town hall. Because I don't know if you noticed, none of that was scripted. And there's actually a longer version of that where he just goes on until he can't breathe. Easily the best supporting cast member.
That is amazing. Love it, love it, love it. Jake, Mr. Moderator.
Yeah, it's like 22 minutes on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think one of my favorites is just such a great foil to Leslie is Jeremy Jam. The guy is just so awful and so bad, but you still end up feeling bad for him when he ends up with Tammy, who might also be one of my favorites. Tammy's a great pick too. I don't know. There's a lot of great supporting cast and supporting characters.
Don't be a Gary.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. We appreciate everything, like taking us through the many, many stories of Pawnee, right? And Miss Leslie and her journey as to, what started off as a little hole in the back where she wanted to make a park to politics in the U.S. It's such a great story. I love it and appreciate it. I will let everybody know that I have this bad habit of not watching the entire season finale because in my mind, it's weird. It still keeps on living. It doesn't have a definite yet. So, but I'm definitely going to binge watch the season finale this weekend.
These characters are still going. They just did a pandemic episode. They're still in touch. They're still going. They're still fine, man.
They are amazing. They are
I think Ro froze up.
I think Ro froze.
That
means we can just keep talking about Parks and Rec forever. We'll just keep going.
Excellent. Perfect. I love it. Check this out. Last and final words for your clan. Jake, go ahead and take it. Last and final words for everybody, and then I'll go ahead and sign off.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being here and talking about Parks and Recreation. I love this show. We talked about the growth of the characters. Let me tell you, I don't think there's a single character that's in the same place they were at the beginning of the show, at the end of the show, and that's one of the reasons I love it. Everybody grows and improves, and this is, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Go watch it. Thank you, everybody. This was awesome. So much fun.
Thank you. Jake, where can they find you if they want to go and look you up?
Yeah, you can find me at that Jake Dietz on Twitter. You can find me at Stolen Droids Podcasts and Movies That Make Us.
Perfect. Mr. William, you went ahead and gave us, can you tell everybody about the website for some examples of props and where they can find you if they need you?
Yeah, look up Jeff Mandel. That's GeoffreyMandel.com. JeffreyMandel.com. He did most of the print props, and you will see some hilarious things that you don't think of as props until you start to look at it, including the Sweetums logo, which looks a lot like the Wendy's logo with the pigtails. It's fun.
Sweetums. Can't forget that one. Mr. Tracy, what you got for us?
I'm with Jake. I'm on the Movies That Make Us podcast. You can find me there. And I just appreciate being able to talk about such a fun and uplifting show in some hard times right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much for everything, Mr. Tracy. London, where can we find you or some more information on voting?
So I am on Facebook, but please go register, or if you're already registered, then please make sure that you are still registered and you know where you're going to vote or where you're going to drop off your ballot at vote.gov. That's vote, V-O-T-E, .gov, G-O-V. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss London. And Rachelle, last but not least, final words, or people can find you.
You can find me on Facebook. It's Rachelle Hardy, or on Instagram, Rachelle.Hardy, Hardy. Also on Zealot Films YouTube channel, it's XELOT Film, or on their there's a YouTube channel and a website, zealotfilm.com. I'm in a lot of indie films as a filmmaker and an actor. So
love it. Thank you so much, Miss Rachelle. Hey, from the FanX family to you guys, thank you so much to this virtual panel. Really love it. Appreciate you guys taking the time to go ahead and share all of this with us. We love it. To our FanX family that might be watching this either live or maybe later on delayed, hey, remember, join us for our 2021 event. We want to go ahead and talk about this and many, many other topics in person, right? So we have it scheduled, South Palace Convention Center, Salt Lake City, Utah. You don't want to go ahead and miss out on our event because there's so many questions and comments we didn't get to. So make sure that your voice is heard. You need to treat yourself to literally a really fun event. From me over here at FanX and the virtual panel, everyone over here at our FanX family, thank you. We'll see you guys later. Peace.
Later.